You're listening to The Seed, brought to you by Buick Real Estate, Staley Credit Union, and the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Seed. I'm Julie Staley, and my co-host Laura Yar is out today. She's taking a little COVID precaution break, so we wish her well. Everything is fine, but she just wants to be sure, so she's taking a little break today. I am at the Staley Museum, joined with a very, very special guest who we had on our last episode, and we're continuing with Reverend Randy Garner. Thank you so much for being here, Randy.
Thanks for having me.
It is wonderful to have you here all the way from Virginia, even though he grew up on the farm in North Carolina that A.E. Staley was born and raised on. Randy was also raised on that farm and still owns a piece of that farm. So we want to hear a little bit more about that experience and about your insight. We are so grateful to have you visit this week and talk with us. So much history here that we are sharing with everyone as we get ready for the documentary Fields of Gold, which is being produced by Spencer Films in partnership with the Herald and Review. We're telling the story of A.E. Staley, his life story growing up in North Carolina and finally making it to Decatur, Illinois, where he built the A.E. Staley Manufacturing Company, and so much history going into this film and this production. And we have had so many people help tell this story, and Randy is going to share with us some more of the details that we have on this story. We want to thank also our partnerships that we have with businesses here. First Mid Insurance Group, McGuire, Huffman, Uhas, and Buckley. Thank you for them. We also have three sponsors that we want to thank and mention to talk about their history as well. And we'll be mentioning that throughout this podcast. Buick Real Estate and Staley Credit Union and Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. All of them are businesses that have really been a part of history in our community. Preserving history is something that they all have been proud of, especially when you consider how long they've been in this area and how many customers they have been able to reach out to. Buick Real Estate, for instance, has preserved history for many, many years. Buick Real Estate is proud to support Decatur and its rich history. They not only help people buy and sell residential and commercial real estate, but they enjoy connecting them with the community we all love. Decatur and Central Illinois have much to offer anyone who chooses to reside here, and Buick Real Estate is ready to help you find and buy that dream home or business. You can find out more at buickrealestate.com. That's VIEWEG realestate.com. Buick Real Estate, working hard so you don't have to. So, Randy, we had the chance to go to North Carolina. This is in Randolph County, North Carolina, a really beautiful rolling hills community, a lot of small towns, wonderful people there. We were there filming for the documentary, and we talked to many, many people there who knew about this history of A.E. Staley. It seemed like it really was something that they had a lot of pride in. We went to the Patterson Cottage Museum. Okay. We talked to Warren Dixon there. He was so gracious, and they have a display there about A.E. Staley, and just how surprised we were to be able to see that. Tell me about that feeling there in North Carolina, in your area, in Virginia, about the legacy and the history that's still there today of A.E. Staley.
Well, growing up, I have a brother and a sister, but all of us grew up there on the farm. And as a child, not really appreciating history or any of that. As I've gotten older, I've realized a lot of what I really missed growing up and should have known more about. And I do still have a part of the farm that came from the Staleys that gave it to my mother and father, and we're there. And as I grew up there on that farm, as a young teenager and a young man on that farm, it was a lot of work. So I could imagine what it was like back in the days when A.E. Staley was there and that part of the family was coming through. how difficult it probably was. Even many years later, it was still a challenge. And growing up, it's different than it is today. You worked on the farm. You didn't get to sleep in like some of my family members are sleeping in nowadays, and some other things. You got up early in the morning and you went to the barns and you took care of the animals and stuff. And back when AE was there and that part of the family, there was a dairy farm there, and it was really a large dairy farm and state of the art of that day and that time in that era. So I can imagine all of the things that went on. Now, by the time I came along, lots of things had changed at that time. There was no dairy farm there, but the farm has always continued to be farmed. Now, a lot of times it was rented out to others that farmed their crops there on the farm. But it was a place where we lived all those years. And my dad, one of his prides and joys, that farm, is he went to his grave owning that entire property that was given to him by the Staleys.
And that's something now that's been passed down
It has.
to you and your brothers, correct?
Brother and sister.
Brother and sister.
Yep, it was divided 3 ways after my father died. And so I've still held on to my part. Times change and everything in life and history changes. So, but I've still kept mine. One of these days, probably will sell it as part of maybe a retirement or something of that nature. So I'm blessed and I'm grateful. That's what I keep saying. I'm really fortunate that I did get this, years ago.
And this is the land that A.E. Staley planted the first soybean that he knew of.
That is correct. At least, again, stories that we know. Shiloh Church, a mile and a half from the house, is where the family went to church. And sometime in history, there was a missionary from China that came and brought soybeans to this country. Can you imagine now trying to bring something in from another country, a soybean or a piece, whatever, getting through customs or something with it today? But he brought it. And there at Shiloh Church, so the story goes, is where Mr. A.E. Staley, and I'm assuming his father at that time, got some soybeans. And so one of the stories is that A.E. had some in his pocket, went back to the farm, and somewhere along the line planted those soybeans. And from there, the legacy and the history of the soybean in North Carolina is phenomenal. I mean, it was a huge crop in North Carolina, became a very big. And then, the story of AE developing through the AE Staley manufacturing, the developing of the soybean to where it is today.
All because they were carrying out the tradition of going to church camp at Shiloh Methodist Church, something that they all look forward to. All the families did in that area. Another company in this area that carries on tradition is the Staley Credit Union. What if you owned your bank? Well, if you join Staley Credit Union, you will. When you're a credit union member, profits come back to you, not the investors. And how does that happen? Well, if you think lower interest rates on loans, higher dividends on savings, financial education, and unmatched member service. You can become a member today. Visit StaleyCU.com. And this institution is not federally insured by Member Choice. It's proudly insured by American Share Insurance. So we were talking about the Shiloh Methodist Church, the camp that A.E. Staley and his family went to. Maybe tell me a little bit about what that atmosphere was like. It seems like it was something exciting that they always look forward to.
Well, again, as a child, things have changed by the time I come along, and we had revival meetings. But one of the big traditions there, even when I was still a child coming along, was they had dinner on the ground. And at that place for years and years and years, the large oak trees that are on the property, the people had built tables from one tree to the other that never came down. They stayed up year round, and they would have dinner on the ground. Families would go there. And then occasionally they would have these meetings that would be there. And a lot of the community went, but it was a part of their life. Willa Staley, AE's sister was my grandmother, and I had a Bible that I've brought to the museum that has some history in it of the family trees, births and deaths and things of that nature. But the family, church was a part of it back in those days. And somewhere along the line, Julie, I don't know where, but one of them had hoped that their son, A.E., would have become a preacher. And it skipped 2 or 3 generations, and here I am. So whoever that was that brought it on, so I ended up with that, and I'm thankful that I did.
Yes, and you've been doing that really most of your adult life.
Yes.
So, so that's a real calling that you had, and you definitely have had a lot of experience in that. It was a calling that A.E. Staley had to be a businessman. His father wanted him to be a minister, and that apparently skipped the generations to you. But A.E. Staley knew he wasn't going to be a farmer. He knew it just wasn't for him. And what a jump to make, to go from working on that farm as a teenage boy to jumping out into those cities, traveling so far away back then on a horse, by foot, maybe by train.
By train, yeah.
If you were lucky. What was the nearest train station when he was growing up that you think would have been?
I'm not sure if Julian, which is a little community there, there was a feed store there and a little store and just a few things. I'm not sure if there was a stop there for the train that you could have gotten on as a passenger. Probably Greensboro would have been the closest at that time that you could have gotten on.
We stopped by, saw an old depot in Liberty.
Liberty, yes.
And I think they mentioned that he might have gone through there as well. So, trying to map out all of his excursions has actually been quite a chore, because sometimes he would go on foot. He would go by stagecoach, however he could get there. And really, he was a scrapper in that way. He would do what it took to get the job done, and that experience helped him throughout his life. We also want to mention that we have a lot of businesses in the area that use their experience to help you find what you need, and that includes the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. At the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James, you'll find a team of professionals with more than 250 years of combined experience, offering steadfast guidance for families, individuals, businesses, and institutional investors. Their powerhouse of experience is supported by the award-winning resources of Raymond James. That's one of the largest independent financial service firms in the country. So for more, you can visit thebrecknitzgroup.com. That's the BRECHNITZ group.com. Brecknitz Group of Raymond James, a financial future backed by strength and stability. So it's interesting to think that all of this history started with traveling to church camp, going to this event every year, just happenstance, meeting this missionary who had soybeans, planting them in your field, in your backyard. And all of this history has come about, including the athletic history with the football team and how the Decatur Staleys became the Chicago Bears. He had quite a history with his baseball team and all of his athletic teams. A.E. Staley actually was quite a sports nut. He loved sports and loved playing them as a boy growing up, because there, as he has said in our documents, that there really wasn't a whole lot else to do there. So, Randy, I imagine that there are a lot of boys that play a lot of sports out in that area.
They do. And I grew up dreaming about playing sports too. What I knew about the Chicago Bears back in that time when I was in high school, one of their star players in the day was Dick Buckus, number 51. And he was the guy I wanted to emulate in high school. And I don't think I quite made that part of it, but I wanted to. But I think about, him. I do Facebook blogs and stuff, things. And yesterday here in Decatur, on the wall and the building down here, there's a mural painted on there of the history of the Staley athletics. So people need to know that probably if it weren't for A.E. Staley, Where would the NFL? It may not even be here today. Think about
It's
that.
hard. It's hard to say because he sent George Hallis and Morgan O'Brien
Yep.
to the meeting in Canton, Ohio, and history went from there. We all know the rest, and so who knows how it would have ended up. But some of that, did start with A.E. Staley making decisions for them to go there. And the mural downtown in downtown Decatur was done by artist Jerry Johnson, who has been on a previous podcast of ours. So you can look at our episodes and check out all of his details on that. But it was wonderful to see that on your Facebook page that you were able to go and you got the whole mural because it's a really long building and it's hard. You can't really get it in one picture.
You cannot. And but it was neat to be able to do it and got a lot of feedback from it. And tell just a brief snippet about how it went from the Decatur Staleys to the Chicago Bears. When they went up there, they had the Chicago Cubs already. And I think it's in the book that there was a little snippet in there written about, well, we've got baseball players that are typically smaller and they're the Cubs. So hence we're going to have the Bears. And that's how the
football players are a little bigger. That's what they thought back then. So that made perfect sense. Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much, Randy, for joining us. We've really, really enjoyed having you here at the Staley Museum, which, is a home for everyone, for all of the people who have helped build this company, for all of the people who are part of the family. We hope that everyone returns here and visits here as much as possible. So we hope to have you back very soon.
Planning the trip.
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we thank you all for joining into this episode of The Seed. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Viewing Real Estate, Staley Credit Union, and the Brecknitz Group of Raymond James. Also, our partners, Herald and Review, First Mid Insurance Group, and McGuire, Huffman, Newhouse, and Buckley. I'm Julie Staley, and Laura Yar sends her best. We hope to see you and listen for you on our next podcast.